Hey y'all, welcome to Art of the Budget. This is the Investing 101 series. And if you're new here, my name's Nicole. My pronouns are she and her, and I live in the Pacific Northwest on the unceded territory of the Coast Salish Nations. And I'm an artist and educator. I'm currently learning about budgeting, saving, and investing for retirement and sharing what I learn along the way. So if that sounds interesting, I would love you to subscribe. And if you like this video, I would love it if you would like it. Today we're going to talk about how to get started investing. So where and how do you actually do the investing? And we're going to talk about a small part of it because there's just so much information. I personally find it really overwhelming, and there are just so many words, so much jargon. So today we're just going to talk about how do you get an account and what kind of account to get to invest for retirement. I'm really hoping that I'm going to put some text here to help you follow along, and I'm also going to drop a document down below that you can download. So I've got notes. I'm going to probably be looking down at my laptop fairly often. Real quick, I'm just going to remind you, in the last video we talked a little bit about why invest. I actually have a whole video about why I invest, but essentially it's because we can get the most return on our money, more than in a high yield savings account. And there are a lot of different estimates that people use for what the return on the market is, but I'm just going to use 7%. It's not the only estimate, it's just the one I'm going to use today. So it's a little high, it's a lot higher than, say, a high yield savings account. And then this interest is compounding. So over the years, with time, over the years, the amount you have increases, and so then the interest on that increases. We kind of know how it is when we have credit card debt or student loan debt, and it's like the interest is more than we even borrowed to begin with. That is when compound interest works against us. But when we've got it invested in the market, it's working for us. We talked a little bit in the last video about the ethics of that, so go back and watch that if you're curious about my opinion, which may not be your opinion. That's fine. Little disclaimer, there's a lot to know. I'm just hitting the main types of accounts and the main points that I, as a working class artist type person, sees them. It's certainly not an exhaustive list, and it's maybe pretty specific to the US. And this should really just serve as a jumping off point for your own research. Feel free to drop questions below. If you have answers, feel free to answer questions below, or to just tell everyone your 2 cents as well. But keep in mind that I'm just trying to keep this very simplified. Now, of course, the more you know you don't know. And that can be really frustrating, but fortunately, getting an idea of the basic types of accounts and where to start is pretty straightforward. Hey y'all, it's Editing Nicole here. I realized I forgot a kind of important piece of information, and that is if you are working somewhere and you think that you may have some kind of retirement account or have access to it, but you're not sure, you don't remember, or you don't have the paperwork, or whatever reason, I was in that same boat, you actually just need to go to HR or talk to the HR person or whoever handles that in whatever type of business you're in. That is exactly what I had to do when I finally kind of got a handle on things. I had to go back to HR and be like, what did I sign up for? And how does that work? And can you give me that paperwork again? And it's no big deal. They're probably really used to it. So how do you invest? How do you make an account to invest with? You invest through a brokerage firm. If you have an employee-sponsored account, which we'll talk about below, you may go through their brokerage firm and or their pension information site, or maybe both, depending on your employer. If you decide to do an individual retirement account, you'll go directly to your own firm. Some examples of firms that I like, that I feel like Personal Finance YouTube or personal finance circles in general generally approve of are Vanguard, Charles Schwab, and Fidelity. These are primarily online, and so they have the best expense ratios, meaning how much you pay to actually invest. So we're going to talk about taxes. So as you know, you pay taxes on your income, and this might be like something that your employer does for you. You just get a paycheck, the taxes have been paid, or you might bring in your income and then quarterly or yearly pay your own taxes. But yeah, we pay taxes. You also have to pay, we pay taxes on our income. You also have to pay taxes on income that you make in the market. So when we invest in retirement accounts, we get a tax break or a tax advantage, okay? And another way to say that is tax sheltered. So you get some kind of break on taxes. If you have a taxable brokerage account, so this is not in a retirement type of account, you don't have a tax advantage. You pay capital gain taxes on money you make from this type of account. I will say as an aside, there are certainly ways to get around that, but generally you pay taxes on that income, or in theory you pay taxes on that income, and typically folks like me would want to probably max our tax advantaged accounts if we could before moving on to that type of account, because that's how we're going to get the most bang for our buck. So there are two types, or there are at least two types. The first one that you may have heard of is tax deferred. This means you don't pay money on those taxes when you invest it. You pay taxes on that income when you use it in the future. This means that your taxable income is less now, and there is a limit to how much you can contribute to this type of account every year. The other type is growing tax-free. You pay taxes now just like you normally would. Either you get your paycheck and they're paid, or you pay your quarterly or your yearly taxes, and you invest that money, and since you've already paid taxes on it, it grows tax-free. So when you go to use it in the future, there's no taxes, there's no more taxes. And many of these accounts also have a limit to how much you can contribute to them every year. They also may have a limit to how much money you can make in order to have access to them. But probably if you're watching this video, that's not a concern for you. Sometimes you might wonder which one is better. I certainly did. And there are a few things to consider. So do you want to lower your taxable income right now? In the future, will you be in a higher or a lower tax bracket? So do you want to pay taxes now or in the future based on that? Bottom line, one is better than none. So one might mathematically be slightly more advantageous, but what is not more advantageous is not having one at all. So one is better than none. So now that we've talked about the two types of tax advantages, we're going to talk about different types of specific accounts that you get that have these tax advantages. And first we're going to talk about employee-sponsored accounts. So first one on my list, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about like my experience with this. I don't know the ins and outs of every type, but that is a pension. So typically this is taken care of and controlled by your employer. It may take years to vest, which means you have complete access to it. You may vest all at once after a certain amount of years of service, or you may vest incrementally, it depends. But it may take some time to vest or have complete access, but you will receive payments until you die, as long as that company or institution doesn't disappear or go out of business. You can always roll your own contributions over to another account when you leave this employer, or you can leave it with them. For example, if you've vested, you may just want to know that you'll have that money, however much it is, available to you when you retire. If you haven't vested, you may just want to leave it there because you think you might go back. So for example, I work for the state of Washington, so if I got another job somewhere, like say in Arizona, and I moved there, but I left my pension here, maybe in 5 years I come back, I work 20 more years for the state of Washington, and then I retire primarily with that pension. That would be great. If I move to Arizona, I find out I love it, Arizona is my new life, then I could later roll that over. Next, we're going to talk about 401ks and 403bs. These are both tax deferred, meaning they will lower your taxable income now and you'll pay taxes in the future. Some employers will offer to match your contributions, and most people agree that it's a good idea to take it. We talked about earlier the general return for the market is 7%. Obviously 100% is way better than that, so always take it if you can. Again, you may need to vest, so you might need to have a certain amount of years of service before that money is yours completely, but of course your contribution is always yours, so always worth it to take it, even if you think you won't stay there that long, because you never know. You'll usually access this through your employer or their website, and you may, one disadvantage of some 401ks or 403bs is you may have a little less choice and they may cost a little more in terms of what you can actually invest in, which we're going to talk about in the next video. Next, we're going to talk about Roth 401ks and 403bs, really similar to above, but those contributions come out after tax and they grow tax-free. That Roth prefix always means that they're after tax and they grow tax-free. All of these types of accounts have a penalty if you want to access it before you're 55. So you need to be of retirement age, traditional retirement age, to access. The next thing we're going to talk about is f.i.r.es and solo 401ks. These are sometimes offered to small business employees. There is a limit to them, but it depends on your income and your employer's contribution. But these are great options for small businesses. And all 401ks and 403bs typically have a limit of $19,500 per year collectively. So 401k or a 403b. If for some reason you had access to both, say you switched jobs halfway through the year, it's one pot. You can max out at $19,500. 457bs are an additional type of account you may have access through your employer. They are tax deferred. They are often offered to government employees and teachers. Where I work, it's actually called deferred comp, so it took me a minute to find it. And I accessed this website through my state retirement website. The cool thing about 457bs are twofold. One, you can access this money after you separate from service, so it's not based on age. And two, it is a completely separate pot of money that you can add up to $19,500 to. So in a 401k and or 403b, $19,500, and then you can have a whole separate pot of money for your 457b. There are a few different types of 457bs, and if you don't work for the government or for a school, if you work for a nonprofit and you have access to one of those types, just check and make sure that it has those same benefits. Okay, so if you are individually working, like say you're doing gigs or you're working for yourself, you want to have an individual retirement account, and you do this through a brokerage firm, as mentioned above. You go directly to Vanguard.com or CharlesSchwab.com and you open an account. A traditional IRA is tax deferred, and a Roth IRA grows tax-free. And a benefit with these is that you often have a lot of choices for what you invest in, and often you can get a better expense ratio, so a better price essentially. And these you can access without a penalty after age 59 and a half. So again, you have to be up there at that traditional retirement age to access these without any penalties. There are a few exceptions to that rule and they're worth looking into, but that's the general gist. You can add up to $6,000 a year, again, total. So you can have both, but you can only put $6,000 total into that one IRA pot. There are also SEP IRAs and solo 401ks. These can be used by self-employed folks who may want to contribute more than $6,000. The limit, I think, will vary again depending on those variables of how much you make, but they are higher than $6,000, so worth looking into if you're self-employed. So that's basically the gist. And once you have an account, you will link your bank account to it and start sending money. That money will probably be immediately put into a money market account and just sit there, basically a savings account, until you invest it, which means within that account you buy certain things. And we're going to talk about those in the next video. So I hope this was useful. Let me know down below if you learned anything or if you've got anything to add. Keep in mind I was trying to keep it very clear and simple, and I will see you in the next video.